think in contrast to you both in terms of my musical upbringing, so I was born in 85, and so by the time I was 13 years old, there was a boom in Rotherham, at the Wellington boom, across from the old New York Industrial Complex. And you could go in, you could be 10 years old or older and go in, and it'd be £2 every Tuesday. And they'd bring in bands from Europe, all around the country, local stuff, whatever, and they'd give a chance for local bands to support all these bands. Bands who came through Rocket Baby Dolls, which would become Muse. We had, though it's not that exciting to mention nowadays, we got Lost Prophets and Skindred in, who were and are big bands now, but they paid them 150 quid and they turned up to the Wellington boot in a double-decker touring bus. And we thought like the apocalypse had happened, we were that excited, and we got to meet them. And you know, bands our age, 15, 16 years old, my first show was there, you get to support bands like that and talk to them, get advice off of them.
See what they're doing.
It was a community thing. It was very much a gang thing, like you say. But there was such a large community. There'd be about 4 or 5 venues in Rotherham at the time, just opening the function rooms because they knew there were us kids gagging to play 3 days a week. Same set for 2 years. It's fine.
Literally.
Just do it. But all your mates come down.
That's like the time-old story, isn't it? Music in Rotherham.
Yeah.
It's literally it's the same little venues, the same people coming in.
Yeah,
playing
and
the same sets.
You could sell shandy to young'uns because when you first start in college, you could get 200 people to turn up to a gig at Boardwalk or something like that, even if you were rubbish. But you just would, because you had this. We were lucky enough at our time to have this wonderful network of stuff. And I know that before your musical generation, it tapered off, and people. So the venues started to close. Like some of the funding wasn't coming in that was originally there in the late 90s and the early 2000s. And it just became a ghost town musically. The musicians were always there, but they just went to Sheffield instead, which is fair and by the by. Everyone has the right to go out and do it, but it didn't really. The town didn't help itself at the time with it.
Yeah, I mean, like when we going back to starting to actually get going and trying to get gigs and stuff, there was a time when we first started, and like you couldn't get a gig anywhere because there was nothing on. Like there was nothing in Rotherham. There was nothing happening. So we ended up finding our like little happy spot almost in like the open mic scenes, and like going to the Bridge Inn and stuff like that, like going to poetry nights and going to any creative event we could get to kind of just be a part of it, be a part of something that were going off.
So I'm just kind of a local musician who's just happened to have a lot of great experiences and opportunities in the past. About a decade ago, I was in a band called Hey Chalet. We wrote out a couple of albums on an independent label called Fierce Panda from London. We were kind of psychedelic indie stuff at the time. We were lucky enough to play some big stages, some big supports, European tours, things like that. It was short-lived, but it was fantastic. Nowadays, I'm more in the kind of, I'm one of 5 people who run a venue in Rotherham, so we're trying to bring back, as I mentioned the Wellington earlier, trying to bring back that kind of platform for teenagers to have stuff for them to support bands from Europe and things like that, and give them a bit of an opportunity to organically grow rather than going down the theoretical angle like you were saying earlier. I still play in bands as a bit of a hobby, still get to tour every now and then. Do bits and bats around Europe, but small kind of DIY venues. It's more along the kind of punk to heavy metal spectrum. I've kind of seemed to work backwards in my musical taste as I've got a bit older. Started off with really heavy, got more mature, then went right back to it a couple of years ago. So that's me really.
So I'm in a band called The Ratings. We've not been going for as long as you guys have been going on, but we play kind of like indie alternative kind of music. I think it's probably leaning a bit heavier than indie nowadays. We just played our first gig back from lockdown on Sunday, which was Tramline's main stage.
In front of how many people?
I think it was about 40,000
For a first show.
40,000 people, yeah. Which is the most we've ever actually played as well, like the most people we've ever played to. So it was a real test for us, I think. But yeah, it's been a strange old journey for us, I think. We've all come from different backgrounds, but very similar backgrounds in terms of like, you know, where we've grown up and the things we've seen growing up. And I think majority of his songs rely on, you know, the stories, the storytelling aspect of the lyrics and the music and that. And I think there's a lot more. I don't know how to put it.
There's a lot of local references.
Yeah, there's a lot of local references, and I don't think a lot of times you can get kind of lyricists and the songs very conceptual, and I think our songs are very kind of literal stories, what you can kind of relay in your head when you listen to them, and you can hopefully kind of, it paints a picture of what's really going on.
Coming from Rotherham, germinating in Rotherham, do you feel like, because I think there's something that, it was definitely something when I was younger, we used to, I'm embarrassed about it now, we used to say that we're from Sheffield because nobody had a reference point geographically. Whereas now, there's, in terms of the lyrics and the pronunciation and the regional dialect that's involved in it, there's definitely an innate Rotherham identity in what you do.
Oh yeah, I think it was quite weird. The whole kind of Sheffield indie scene. I think that it was quite apparent that there was kind of similarities between ourselves and other bands. You know, you get the Arctic Monkeys got into a lot of things, but I think there's the kind of when we start. Yeah, when we started up, the thing is we're from the same place. I mean, the lead singer's from Fort Pesley. You know, not far from those guys either. You know, and I think it's quite easy to be pigeonholed as a band when you're from around here, having the accent and the kind of Sheffield sound. So I think we really kind of pushed to kind of deliberately maintain as Rotherhamness.
In subject matter and pronunciation.
In everything, yeah. So, I mean, literally talking about Clifton Park in his song lyrics, you know, and places like Mexborough, talking about places in, like, seeing stories of people in, like, Chesterfield and things like that, and really kind of pinpointing not just kind of his own back door, but kind of the surrounding areas as well.
I think it's cool that someone's coming out and shouting about it, because we were quite sheepish about where we came from initially. We weren't embarrassed, but we thought that a universal opening to an audience would be in kind of anonymity, I guess. You know, so we did hold it back, which I think I think all of us regret it in hindsight.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that we have really prided ourselves on, is that we've always been very open and honest about where we come from and who we are. And I think in terms of our journey, I don't think we're ever going to not be a local band. Yes. We've all done the open mic scenes and the toilet circuits, and you know,
still dipping every now and then at our place, don't you? With
the
open mic stuff.
Yeah, definitely. Like I love it, live for it.
You say now you sort of pride in you know, Rotherham references and that. It took Pulp to go away from this area to start singing about it. When everyone lived in Sheffield, singing a song about Sheffield or Rotherham or Chesterfield or whatever would have been like, you know, what are you doing? You know, no one did that. I mean, no, I don't think anyone even got that idea. Yeah. But you know, in sort of late 80s, four of us ended up living in London for a bit, and certainly because Jarvis wrote all the words, you kind of got a different perspective when you're not kind of swimming in it. You kind of got this new idea of looking at Sheffield and its characters and its people and the sort of the daft things you get up to. Because in London, if you start to get to a certain level, you're just hanging around with toffs.
Of course, yeah.
You know, and it's Tarquin and Oscar, this kind of stuff. Sorry if I was called Tarquin Oscar. I think we're on safe ground to be. So I'm going to be all right. Yeah. You know, and you kind of realise that they seem a bit devoid of personality.
Yeah.
You know, and London's all right in its way, but it can really grind you down. So it kind of gave us a new perspective, and it's almost seemed like Pulp were doing something different by singing about calling Sheffield Sex City. You know, people like, it's not Sex City.
That's the point.
Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Maybe you can discover something, you know. And so that was kind of prick people's ears up and that sort of thing. But it took the remove to for the sort of penny to drop, because there's a lot of interesting characters in this next.
It's good to see that, because it was the first Leeds Festival I went to, headlining it, and I remember Disco 2000 coming out and looking at the way that they visually represented the characters that Jarvis had made, and just instantly going to Park Hill Flats and that kind of brutalist architecture and that 60s, 70s upbringing, things like that. And it reminded me, even as a little one, because I was always obsessed with analysing music and trying to figure out where it came from, that I hadn't, with my little vocabulary at that age, I had a music, I hadn't heard anybody else talk about their own town other than the Beatles, and the Beatles did it in a very kind of fantastical way.
Yeah, certainly.
They did it in almost
a fantasy way.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas again, like Sex City, it was
talking about the nitty gritty, and
it was kind of
people with people have daft ideas, sometimes, and I think certainly back in let's say the 80s, you did see lots of really, really strange characters.
It is great to kind of think about kind of not just reporting that fantasy idea of glamorizing where you're from, and actually taking a much more kind of outwards approach of looking at where you come from and actually going what can we pick apart to kind of explain to people where we are and what
the memory often lies in the bitterness and the venom and the disappointment as much as it does how much you enjoy Dave the Butcher doing your favourite cutlet or something like that.
Yeah, I think we were always properly inspired by Shane Meadows' approach to where he comes from, and how he illustrated his story and how he's seen things with Scummy Man, This Is England, and all those. And I think for us that was one of the key parts of us kind of discovering his sound, and what we wanted to talk about was all of us sharing a common interest in the kind of real nitty gritty of how do you explain to someone who's not from Rotherham what Rotherham is.
So you both came from an angle of authenticity of what was surrounding you in your past and your legacies that you brought up with and things like that.